going to read you a few more chapters from Wayside School, Beneath the Cloud of Doom. Chapter 4. And there's the illustration for chapter 4. Consider the paperclip. Read a book. Write a book report. Draw a picture. That was the assignment Mrs. Jules put up on the board. Dana's picture showed a giraffe studying a map. She had drawn a large question mark over the giraffe's head. Her book report only had to be 1 page, but she had written 2 whole pages. The Lost Giraffe was her favorite book ever. Now all she needed was a paperclip. She searched her desk. She found quite a few pencils, mostly broken. There were lots of eraser bits and crayon nubs. There was also a crumb-covered pink piece of paper that had come off the bottom of a cupcake. "Oh no, oh no!" she moaned as she continued to search. She raised her hand. "Yes, Dana," said Mrs. Jules. I need a new paperclip." "But I gave you one at the beginning of the year," said Mrs. Jules. "I know, Mrs. Jules. I'm sorry. I can't find it." Mrs. Jules sighed. "I'm very disappointed in you, Dana." "I need a new paperclip too," said Joe. Mrs. Jules glared at him. "What did you do with the one I gave you?" "I think I used it on my science homework," said Joe. "I handed that back yesterday," said Mrs. Jules. "Didn't you save the paperclip?" "I guess not," Joe admitted. Phoebe was finishing up the last part of her picture. "Paperclip, please," she said, without looking up from her work. "One for me, too," said Calvin. Mrs. Jules slammed her hand down on her desk. "Do you think paperclips grow on trees?" she asked. "I don't know," said Calvin. "I gave each one of you a paperclip at the beginning of the year. It was your responsibility to take care of it." She opened her desk drawer, took out her paperclip box, and opened it. There are only 6 left. She shook her head in dismay. "Can I have one?" asked Joy. "I can't find mine." Mrs. Jules was too angry to reply. She moved to the front of the room. "You children are so spoiled," she said. "Do you have any idea what it takes to make just 1 paperclip?" She held up one of her last remaining paperclips. "Look at the perfect double loop, and the way it gleams in the light, almost like a mirror." Her anger seemed to melt away as she marveled at the magnificent metal masterpiece. "It takes a lot of very talented people, and years of training and hard work," she explained. "First, there's a wire maker. Paperclip wire has to be just right. Not too stiff, but not too wiggly either. Then there's the wire polisher," she continued. "That's who gives the paperclip its special gleam, and the wire cutter, who cuts each wire to its precise length. And finally, and most importantly, the master bender. The bender carefully bends the wire into the perfect double loop." She put her hand over her heart. "Sadly, in these rush, hurry days, not too many young people study the art of paperclip bending. There are only a handful of master benders left in the whole world. And who knows, in 10 or 20 years there might not be any. Everyone will have to switch to staples." "That's so sad," said Dana. Mrs. Jules gave the paperclip to Dana. "Now don't lose it." "I won't," promised Dana. "Let me see," said Bibi. Dana proudly showed Bibi her new paperclip. "It's so beautiful," said Bibi, admiring the double loops. "I never noticed before." "I'm going to be a paperclip bender when I grow up," said Calvin. Mrs. Jules smiled at Calvin. She had never been more proud of a student. I wonder if any of you are going to be paperclip vendors when you grow up. I don't know. Then chapter 5. And there's your illustration for chapter 5. Eric, and what's his name? Oh, that's right, Eric. There are 3 Erics in Mrs. Jules' class. Eric Fry, Eric Bacon, and the other one, who everyone always forgets, Eric Ovens. Eric Fry is strong and fast. He is usually the first one chosen when picking teams. Eric Bacon is funny, clever, and just a little bit sneaky. Everyone in Mrs. Jules' class likes him, but no one completely trusts him. Eric Ovens is kind, quiet, and 100% trustworthy. Sadly, that kind of person is often overlooked, but not today. He thought as he sat at his desk waiting patiently for Mrs. Jules to finish taking attendance. Today would be his day of glory. In his pocket was a plastic bag with 83 nail clippings. 2 numbers have been written on the blackboard, 71 and 2,677. So far, the class had collected a total of 2,677 nail clippings. 71 were the most brought in by any one kid. They didn't just have to be toenails. Fingernails counted too. Eric Ovens took his bag out of his pocket and placed it on his desk. "How many you got?" said Kathy, who sat next to him. Eric didn't want to jinx his big day by saying the number aloud. Besides, he knew Kathy would only say something mean or mock him. Mrs. Jules closed her attendance book. "Anyone have any nail clippings this morning?" Eric Ovens raised his hand. "Yes, Eric," said Mrs. Jules. Eric Ovens quietly pushed his chair back, but before he could get up, he saw Eric Fry already making his way to the front of the room. 40! Eric Fry declared proudly. Eric Fry had kept his hand in a fist all morning. Everyone thought he was just trying to be tough. Now he opened his fist and let 40 nail clippings fall into the collection bucket. "Well done, Eric," said Mrs. Jules. Everyone clapped their hands. Eric Ovens smiled as he clapped his hands too. 83 was more than double 40. Eric Fry did the math on the board. "Halfway to 1,000,000!" cheered Stephen. "Not quite," Allison told him. "Anyone else?" said Mrs. Jules. Again, Eric Ovens raised his hand, but Eric Bacon had already hopped out of his seat and was headed toward the front of the room. He handed Mrs. Jules a plastic bag full of nail clippings. 349, he declared triumphantly. The class went wild. Sherry gasped. Stephen even fell out of his chair. Eric Bacon danced around Mrs. Jules' desk like a football player who had scored a touchdown. Mrs. Jules was skeptical of the spectacle. "I could count them," she warned. Eric stopped dancing. "Go right ahead," he challenged her. Mrs. Jules stared Eric Bacon in the eye. Eric Bacon stared right back. Mrs. Jules dumped the bag on her desk and divided the clippings into 4 piles. She asked Damien, Allison, and John to help. They each took a pile, and then Mrs. Jules added their totals together. 349, she announced, just as Eric said. Again, everyone cheered, and Eric Bacon continued his victory dance. "How did you get so many?" Mrs. Jules asked him. "I just went door to door asking my neighbors," he said. Everyone laughed. Leslie had sold wrapping paper door to door, but she couldn't imagine asking people for their toenails. It's easier than asking for money, said Eric. Everyone was happy to donate. He erased the number 71 and put 349 in its place. Then he did the math. Almost a million! Stephen called out. Not even close, muttered Allison. Mrs. Jules told Eric Bacon to take a Tootsie Roll Pop from her coffee can. He took one. Then, when she wasn't looking, he took another. Not a good choice. Anyone else? Asked Mrs. Jules. Eric Oven sat glumly at his desk. Raise your hand, urged Kathy. Why bother? He muttered. Kathy got up from her seat and stood next to him. She grabbed Eric's arm and raised it for him. Eric Ovens brought a whole lot, she announced. Bring them on up, said Mrs. Jules. He had no choice. It's just 83, he said, and then emptied his bag into the nail bucket. That's the second most ever, shouted Kathy. She started clapping. Amazingly, everyone else clapped too. They were still clapping as he did the math on the board. That's closer to 1 million, exclaimed Stephen. Everyone cheered, and even Allison couldn't argue with that. These kids and their nail clippings, I tell you. I don't know about you, but I think that's a little gross. I don't know, but that's my opinion. Your opinion might be different. And then let's read chapter 6. Opposite osis. Let's find out what character this chapter is about. Eric Ovens wasn't the only one who had noticed that Kathy had become nice. Others, too, began to notice her odd behavior. I like your picture, Kathy told Beebe. What's wrong with it? Beebe asked. Nothing, said Kathy. It's perfect. You are so talented. It took Beebe a moment to realize that Kathy hadn't insulted her. Mrs. Jules also noticed the change. Kathy, will you come here, please? She asked. Kathy approached her teacher's desk. Yes, Mrs. Jules? She asked. Mrs. Jules smiled. You have been doing very well, Kathy, she said. I've noticed a real improvement in your work and in your attitude. That must be because you're such a great teacher, said Kathy. Well, thank you, said Mrs. Jules, but there's a tiny little problem. I'm having a hard time reading your homework. What do you mean? Asked Kathy. Look at it, said Mrs. Jules, showing Kathy her most recent homework assignment. What's wrong with it? Asked Kathy. Then there's a picture of her homework, what she wrote. That doesn't look like any letters I've ever seen. First thing we learned in psychiatrist school, Dr. Pickles said as he patted DJ on the head. My hiccups are all gone, DJ told Kathy. Who cares? Kathy grumbled. Would you mind stepping inside my office, young lady? Asked Dr. Pickle. But he's the sicko, said Kathy, pointing to DJ. Please, said Dr. Pickle. She entered the counselor's office. That beard is really ugly. I guess your face must be even worse, huh? Dr. Pickle didn't get angry. He just stroked his beard and said, Very interesting. Kathy sniffed. Smells like pickles, she complained. Very interesting indeed, the counselor said, and then asked her to sit down. Kathy sat on the couch. Lumpy, she complained. I'm going to try a little experiment, said Dr. Pickle. I'm going to say a word, and then I want you to say the first word that pops into your head. Stupid, said Kathy. I haven't started yet, said Dr. Pickle. Sloppy, said Kathy. Dr. Pickle realized he had better hurry up and get started. Cold, he began. Hot, Kathy replied. Hard. Soft. Skinny. Fat. This is kind of fun, isn't it, Kathy? Asked Dr. Pickle. No, it's boring, said Kathy. Worse than I thought, said Dr. Pickle. I studied your condition in psychiatrist school. I'm afraid you have a bad case of opposite ptosis. No, I don't. You do. Dr. Pickle stroked his beard. Unfortunately, there is no known cure for opposite ptosis. Other psychiatrists have tried to help their patients learn to be kind and think positively. Dr. Pickle knew that would never work on Kathy. He had his own theory. He could try to turn her opposites into double opposites. He opened his desk drawer and took out his pickle stone and chain. Kathy watched the green stone as it gently swung back and forth, back and back and forth. She fell asleep on the count of 5. Can you hear me, Kathy? He asked. And I can smell you too, she replied. You are looking into a mirror, he told her. I'm looking into a mirror, Kathy repeated, her eyes closed. Tell me what you see. I see a beautiful girl with black hair, she said. And I see a funny-looking man with a pointy beard. Very good, said Dr. Pickle. Now I want you to reach out and touch the mirror. Kathy slowly moved her arm. But as you try to touch it, said Dr. Pickle, you'll discover the mirror isn't solid. Your hand will go right through it. Kathy stuck her hand out farther. That's weird, she said. Now stand up and walk through the mirror. Kathy stood up. She took one step, then another. She hesitated for a moment, then one last step. Amazing! She exclaimed. You are on the other side of the mirror, said Dr. Pickle. What do you see? Kathy looked around. Nice office, she said. She sniffed. Smells nice, too. I'm glad you like it, said Dr. Pickle. Would you like to sit on the couch? Kathy sat back down. Very comfortable, she noted. When I count to 3, you will wake up. But we will still be on the other side of the mirror. 1, 2, 3. Kathy opened her eyes. How do you feel? He asked her. Fine, thanks, said Kathy. How are you? Very well, thank you, said Dr. Pickle. Do you mind if we continue with our little experiment? Sounds like fun, said Kathy. Happy, said Dr. Pickle. Smile, said Kathy. Smart, said Dr. Pickle. Mrs. Jules, said Kathy. Friend, said Dr. Pickle. TJ, said Kathy. Dr. Pickle led her to the door. Thank you, Dr. Pickle, she said, shaking his hand. You are so wise, and I like your beard. Then fast forward to in the classroom with Miss Jules. What's wrong with my homework? Asked Kathy. It's written backward, and there's all these weird squiggle marks, said Mrs. Jules. Every sentence, every word, every letter, even the numbers are backward. Looks normal to me, said Kathy. Do you want me to do it over? Mrs. Jules sighed. No, that's all right, Kathy. I'm just happy to see you doing so well. I'll figure it out. And then the words are backward. Kathy smiled and then returned to her seat. I wonder what Dr. Pickle did to make Kathy so nice. Some of you know because you were listening along. All right, I'll see you again later for the next chapters in our story. Have a great day. Bye.